Pokemon Fire Red is a beloved fan favorite, so what if newer Pokemon got added into the mix, as well as having everything randomized, from the moves to the abilities and to the Pokemon themselves? Well, all except for the types, because I wasn't able to randomize them. But anyway, let's see if I can complete a hardcore Nuzlocke in this Pokemon Fire Red randomizer. For my choice of starting Pokemon, I had Alolan Muck, Go-Goat, and finally Glastrier. So it was pretty obvious what Pokemon I would choose. Now it was time to face my rival. He sent out a Go-Goat and I sent out my Block of Ice, where I made the discovery that my legendary Pokemon in fact has Wonder Guard, an ability which is great. Well, except for the fact that Glastrier is an Ice type and is weak to 3 very common moves. But after enough uproars, my rival's Mossy Goat goes down, and after getting some more Pokeballs, I can finally catch some more Pokemon. And my first encounter was a Drapion that I failed to catch, but then after restocking on balls, I caught a Minfu on Route 22, and then I caught a Reuniclus on Route 2. Finally, before going to the first gym, I caught a personal favorite Pokemon of mine, Staryu, in the Viridian Forest. Now, with a pretty decent team, I face the first gym leader, Brock. Also in this randomizer, you can Dynamax your Pokemon, but because Dynamaxing sucks, I won't be using it. Brock's first Pokemon is a Dynamax Blossom, and after Minfu takes a Max Strike to the face, I swap into Glastrier. Then Brock follows suit by swapping into a Alolan Vulpix, which has Rock Tomb, but it does very little damage, so I managed to finish it off with Uproar, as well as I finish off the Falling Blossom with Uproar for the Boulder badge. Then on Route 3, my first encounter is with a Pikipek, and to finish up my team in Mount Moon, I run into the one and only Family Guy, Peter Griffin. Then I get my first evolution with Pikipek evolving into Trumbeak, but now with 2 new teammates means new disasters await, and it all started with Super Nerd Miguel, whose Gastrodon has Meteor Rush, dealing a blow to Glastrier, but I'm able to finish it off with Uproar. Then comes out as Misdreavus, and because Greedon is the only one with a dark move on the team, I send her out, but she misses every single turn, and eventually she ends up paying for it. So I then send out Trumbeak, who gets caught in a Snap Trap and can't be switched out and sadly falls. Finally, Minfu finishes it off with Petal Dance, and my reward for beating him is a useless rock. Yay. So before I take on Misty, I go to Route 4 and run into a Colossal that I managed to catch. So now with a team of 5, I face the next gym. Her first Pokemon is a Magby, so I Volt Switch into Minfu and take it out with Dark Lariat. Then she sends out a Dynamaxed Oricorio, and after one Max Strike, I realize I need to swap Minfu out. Oricorio can't touch Glastrier, so I send him out, but any damage I deal is undone by Recover. So I had a plan. I'd use Soak, changing Oricorio into a water type, then I'd swap into Colossal, who knows Seed Flare, to take it out, until it hits me with Water Pulse of all moves, taking her out with one hit. So I swap back into my Chunk of Ice and continue dealing damage until its Recover runs out of PP, and I take it out with Uproar for the Cascade badge. After that loss, I challenge my rival, who is much easier than expected. His first Pokemon is Spinarak, that falls to a Frost Breath from Staryu. His Go-Goat can't touch Glastrier, so another Uproar finishes it off. His Hatterene also can't touch Glastrier, so it falls to an Uproar, and by this point, I think you know why his Drapion goes down. Then after turning Bill back into a human, I receive the SS Ann ticket, as well as I gain a new teammate from my encounter on Route 24 with this Cradilly. Speaking of encounters, on Route 5, I run into a Scorbunny that I managed to catch. But then on Route 6, I run into an even better encounter. Let's start off with the positives. I was able to catch Genesect. As for the negatives, well, I did lose Reuniclus during this fight, but now I have room for my new teammate, so after evolving Scorbunny into Raboot, I face my rival on the SS Ann. I Volt Switch on his Spinarak and take it out with an Uproar from Glastrier. Then I put my freshly caught Genesect to use by one-shotting his Wigglytuff with Double Iron. His Binacle, well, I mean it's Binacle, do I really need to explain? Finally, his Delcatty fell to my Dragon Rush from Genesect, and after my victory, I get the cut HM from the captain. Now I can face the next gym leader, Surge. Lieutenant Surge starts off with a Misdreavus, so I Volt Switch into Glastrier, and hit it with Spatial Rend until he swaps into Pidgeot. Then I bring out Genesect to finish off the bird with Dragon Rush, is what I would have said if Genesect had landed his moves, so instead I bring out Raboot to finish it off. Surge then sends out Misdreavus again, so with one more Spatial Rend, the ghost thingy goes down, and all that was left was his funny chicken in a hat, and after it Dynamaxes, it uses an electric move, where I learned that it has protein, so I can now hit it with Cradilly's 1000 waves, because every fossilized plant has that move, by the way. And with a very close call on his last shockwave, I'm able to land another 1000 waves to send this bird into the KFC deep fryer and receive the Thunder badge. Then in the rock tunnel, I run into another escapee from the Colonel's clutches, but just because he escaped the deep fryer doesn't mean he'll escape me. Now with a third legendary on my team, and after evolving Staryu into Starmie with a water stone from the department store, it was time to face the 4th gym leader, Erica. She starts off with a Wingull, who you know is 4 times weak to Volt Switch. Then she sends out a Dynamax Cincino. I think that's how you say it. I don't know, I never had to say it before. Anyway, I use Cradilly to whittle down its health with Submission before swapping into Raboot. Then she uses a Hyper Potion to fully heal it up, which would be annoying, but Raboot had Fissure, a one-hit KO move, so it wasn't that bad. Finally, her last Pokemon was a Leafeon that only knew Sleep Powder and Giga Drain, so Glastrier made very slow work of it until it fainted, giving me the Rainbow badge. After this, I faced Giovanni to get the Silph Scope because he really needed it for some reason, or he was just being evil, probably the latter, but anyway. He starts off with an Alolan Vulpix that gets absolutely demolished by Starmie's Meteor Rush. His Minior knocks itself out by using Submission on my chunk of ice shaped like a horse, and finally his Cradilly goes down to a Fissure from Raboot, and after the middle-aged man gets his ass handed to him by a 3rd grader, he gives me the Silph Scope, so I can now get the Pokeflute from the old guy. So now I can go wake up this Snorlax that's actually a Bayleaf, and as I go to catch it, it decides it has other plans. So I mean, what can you do? Next up was the Safari Zone, in order to get the HM Surf as well as to catch a Mimikyu as my new teammate. Then after my Raboot evolved into Cinderace, it was time to face off against Koga. His first Pokemon was a Dynamax Dugtrio that fell to a couple Shadow Claws from Glastrier. Then he sent out another Dugtrio that goes down to an Icy Wind from Cradilly. Then he sends out a Metapod. Then his final Pokemon was a Pumpkaboo that got burnt to a crisp by Genesect for the Soul Badge. Then in order to go into the 7th gym, I needed to defeat Giovanni and drive Team Rocket out of the town. But first, I needed to defeat my rival. His first Pokemon was a Fomantis that was taken out by an Icy Wind from Starmie. Next was a Liepard that also gets taken out by the GOAT Starmie. As for his next Pokemon, Nickit, my Galarian Zapdos makes his debut to one-shot my rival's Lil Rat with Submission. Next on his team was his own legendary, Heatran, but Cinderace still had Fissure, so yeah, pretty easy stuff. Then finally, for his Inteleon, I used Starmie to Volt Switch into Zapdos, then I took it out with a critical Shockwave. Now with that loser out of the way, I can face an even bigger loser, Giovanni. I'll admit, he did step up his game by sending out Dragalge turn 1, but after it started absorbing sunlight, I swapped into Glastrier to hit it with Spatial Rend, but then it hits me with Focus Blast, dealing pretty big damage to my overgrown Ice Cube. So I made the choice to swap into Cradilly, and he luckily tanks a Focus Blast and manages to outspeed and land an Earth Power for the KO. Next up was his Minior that Genesect lands a double Iron on, taking it out with one critical hit. Then his Houndoom also went down in one hit with a Meteor Rush from Starmie. Finally, his Cradilly went down to a couple Clanging Scales from Cinderace. Now with no more Team Rocket, I can finally face the next gym leader, Sabrina. Sabrina leads with a Binacle. I think we all remember what happened last time, so next was her Dynamax Alcremie that got one-shotted by a double Iron from Genesect. Then her Liepard tanks a Meteor Rush from Starmie, but thanks to the Sandstorm Genesect sets up with his ability, Liepard gets taken out. So now onto her final Pokemon, Boldore, who's no match for my Zapdos with Snipe Shot. And now with the Marsh badge, I can go ahead and face the next gym leader, Blaine. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where everything goes to shit. Blaine's first Pokemon is a Dynamax Inteleon, so after Volt Switching with Starmie, I send out Glastrier, only to learn that it has a Fire-type move. So after this, I send out Cinderace to tank a hit so he can undynamax and hopefully land a Fissure, knocking it out. But I miss, so now I send out Zapdos to hopefully outspeed and hit it with Shockwave, but sadly it outsped and landed a Fire Blast, finally sending Zapdos to the dreadful KFC deep fryer. May he rest in peace. I swap into Starmie to Volt Switch again into Cradilly, who finishes it off with a Shadow Ball. Then I hit his Timber with Meteor Rush, but after I learned that it has Bite, I Volt Switch into Genesect, where Blaine swaps into Mightyena, and I hit it with 1000 arrows, bringing it down into the yellow, as well as I outspeed and land another one, knocking it out. Next up was his Oricorio, so I did the same thing as before. I outsped and hit it with 1000 arrows. But then the Oricorio lands a critical Fire Blast, completely obliterating Genesect. But after that, I Volt Switch, taking out Oricorio, then I used Cradily to Shadow Ball Timber for the Volcano badge. 2 legendaries gone in a single fight, but the worst has yet to come. Luckily, I have Minfu as well as my Mimikyu I caught in the Safari Zone. So now, with a full team again, it was time to face the final gym leader, Giovanni. And remember how I called this guy a loser before? Well, I guess he overheard me and stepped up his game, because this fight sucked. He starts off with a Cradily, so I Volt Switch into my own Cradily. And here's why this fight sucks. His Cradily knows Rock Blast, a move that counters most of my team. So I try putting it to sleep, but then he swaps into another Cradily. Except it's not. It's an Arctivish with Illusion. So now I swap into Minfu to hit it with Petal Dance. And once I almost get it finished off, Giovanni swaps into Houndoom. So I swap into Starmie to hit it with Meteor Rush, but then he swaps into Flygon. So I hit it instead, activating Sand Split to start a Sandstorm. Then, because Starmie needs to recharge, he Dynamaxes the Flygon and lands a Max Quake, leaving Starmie with 3 HP left. Then I send out Glastrier, but guess what? He has Max Knuckles. Luckily, I tank it, but his next move is Double Kick. So it became clear I need to swap out in the Mimikyu, but then Giovanni fully heals Flygon, and even though Mimikyu knows Core in Force, it's not enough to take it out, and Mimikyu falls to a combination of an Earthquake and Sandstorm. Luckily, now I can get a clean swap in the Cinderace, so I land an Ice Punch, knocking it out with full HP. Then he sends out Arctivish, so I send out Minfu, but of course he swaps in the Cradily afterwards. So in order to get another clean swap in, I sacrifice Minfu to swap in the Cinderace to land an Ice Punch for the kill. Then he sends out Arctivish that outsped and land an Earthquake, putting Cinderace in the yellow. But if I were to swap into any other Pokemon, that would have been forfeit. So I let Cinderace fall to get a clean swap in the Cradily and land a Shadow Ball, taking it out. As for his next Pokemon, yeah, the moment I saw that other Cradily, I knew the run was dead. I used Yawn with my Cradily in a last-ditch effort to try to save this run, but then my Cradily fell. And after landing one more Meteor Rush, so did my Starmie. So now, with the enemy Cradily asleep, I go back to where it all started. Until Giovanni uses a full heal to wake up his Pokemon, which in my opinion is a bitch-ass move. But anyway, with one more Rock Blast from Giovanni's Cradily, it was all over. The run was dead. Now here's the biggest question. Will I run this back? And well, seeing this as my third attempt of trying to complete this Nuzlocke, I'm just gonna say, until I finally beat this randomizer, I'll continue to try and complete it. So if that sounds good to you, feel free to subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a fantastic day.